So here are just few body systems. We can see the circulatory system being highlighted there, the heart, the blood vessel. The next system is going to be highlighted now, respiratory system, the lungs and the trachea and the nasal cavity. And the last one is the digestive system, which really is like the major thing we'll be looking at in this. Hello guys, so welcome to Biology Video Lectures with Akerele Oladimiji Philip. It's my pleasure to have you with me on the lecture. So on today's edition of the class, we'll be having the series on organization. Organization, basically, it's something I think we're used to. Let me just introduce it here. In this series of videos, we'll be looking at the principles of organization, digestion, as it were, then organization in cardiovascular and respiratory system, health and disease, plant, tissues, organ, and system. So for each of these topics, they also have their own segment. So underneath digestive system, we're going to have all of this whole thing. All right. Then for the cardiovascular system, we're looking at lungs, heart, and blood vessels and blood, as it were. Then under health and disease, we look at the CHD, which is coronary heart disease, health issues, lifestyle and other communicable diseases, data application, and all of those things, really. Then we'll be looking at plant tissues, organ, and organ system as well. So in this, I'm going to introduce to you what it entails. When we talk about principle of organization, organization talks about how different structures are arranged to form a living organisms. In the instance here, you can see cells come together to form tissues, then tissues form organ, then organs forms organ system or system for short, then that different system forms what? The organism. Now, in the case of humans, you can see that we have, in the case of plants, you can see plant tissues here. So these are different cells making this a tissue. Then in these, you have different tissues making it an organ. Then different organs makes the organ system. Then all of that forms an organism. Same applies to humans. This is a heart. Then the heart with other blood vessel and other structures form the cardiovascular system or transport system. Then different systems, transport system, respiratory system, endocrine system, skeletal system, all come together to form a whole organism, as it were. So now you need to remember that I'm just going to introduce some few stuffs here. All you need to do is just to practically pause the video to write some few notes so that I won't take much of your time. The point is, it says unicellular organisms such as amoeba are made from one cell, because that's the name is called unicellular. But for multicellular organisms such as humans, amongst others, we have collection of cells, and these cells are the ones arranged into tissues to form organs, to form organ system, and the organism, as it were. All right. Now it says in humans, blood cells. Now it might amaze you to know that blood is a tissue. Yeah. Now, why would you call it a tissue? Because it has different cells in it. It has red blood cells, erythrocyte, white blood cells, leukocyte, and thrombocyte, which is platelet. So, and a tissue is what has two or more cells, really, of different type of cells. So that's why it's called a tissue. So it means that blood is a tissue in fluid form, basically. Now it says here, so that means we have cells. Then it says collection of different tissues in the heart forms an organ. Now what we're trying to do is we want to see how we have a system. So we have cells, then different cells form tissue. Now in the heart here, for instance, we have different tissues. This is the right atrium. This is the right ventricle. Left atrium is behind there. This is the left ventricle. They have different texture. This is aorta, different texture. Different texture talks about different tissues, and that forms an organ. Then add that together here, excuse me. Then we have, you can see the organ system. In this instance, it is the blood vessel, the artery, the veins, the heart, all of that form the circulatory or cardiovascular system. Like I said, you should pause the video intermittently to take note of some points, really. All right. So, well, to emphasize, it says here that different tissues perform, different systems perform different functions. For example, digestive system provides the body with nutrients. How does it do that? It breaks down nutrients. The respiratory system does what? Breaks in oxygen majorly and removes carbon dioxide as a waste product of respiration. And we can go on and on. You can ask yourself, what's the function of the skeletal system? To give shape and movement alongside with muscles to bring about movement for the human body. What's the function of the reproductive system? To bring about reproduction, to give about procreation and all of that. All right. So here are just few body systems. We can see the circulatory system being highlighted there, the heart, the blood vessel. The next system is going to be highlighted now, respiratory system, the lungs and the trachea and the nasal cavity. And the last one is the digestive system, which really is like the major thing we'll be looking at in this context. All right. So this is another illustration showing the hierarchical organization of structures. Of course, this one took it from atoms that forms molecules of DNA, which is found in the nucleus of a cell. And that cell, of course, coming together forms tissue and different tissue. You can see this clearly. These are, excuse me, please. This is what we call, this is smooth muscle. We have the oblique smooth muscle. Actually, type of muscles anyways. Then you can see epithelial tissue. So this is a type of tissue, still of tissue. In fact, we even have what we call the glandular tissue, which secretes, what's it called? Fluids or things in the stomach. So this is an organ because it has different tissue. Now, much more than that, let's look at this. Then you now have different organs. We have the esophagus, we have the liver, the stomach, which forms the organ system of, in this instance, going to be, that's the digestive system. Then, of course, that's found in this organism, which this baby or this child. Then if you add all of that respiratory system with the digestive system and everything, forms the whole organism as it were. All right, so that is just to illustrate what this looks like. So this is the introduction into organization, so to say. So here, this is where you have the different definitions that is attached to it. For example, here you can see different type of cells. We have muscle cell, skin cells, neuronal cells. Now, you would agree with me that it is the muscle cells that forms the muscle tissue. All right, the neuronal cells are the ones that are going to form the brain, so to say. So now these are examples of tissue now: muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, connective tissue. Example of organs: heart, liver, stomach, brain, lungs. I mean, we can go on and on. You should be able to mention other ones too. Then here we have the different system. Then of course the human. So this is telling you how different structures are arranged in hierarchy, in organizational level, from the smallest to the biggest, like that, till you form the whole organism as it were. We want to use the stomach to illustrate the organ system to some extent here. On a closer examination, the stomach has three tissues, which are the epithelial tissue, the muscle tissue, the glandular tissue. Like I think I made mention of that a few seconds ago. Now, each of these tissues have different functions. And with that, we have here that epithelial tissue, of course, lines the wall of the stomach, like something like these. Yeah. It lines this. The credit of this picture goes to savemyexam.com. So this is epithelial lining. You can see that. Oh, good. You can see that they're pointed here, pointed here. So basically here, so epithelial lining lines the inside. When you say lining, like epithelial, like it lines the inside and outside of stomach in this instance. Then we have the muscular tissue, which is for what? Contraction and relaxation of the stomach. What does that do? It brings about a process called churning. What's churning? Mixing digestive juice with the food in it. So it means that sometimes, I know you must have heard, sometimes you heard some sound in your stomach, like rumbling sound. Now, caution. It's not every sound you hear in the abdomen that means it is churning. Sometimes you could have something called hunger contraction. Sometimes you might have rumbling sounds from what you've eaten, like some kind of carbonated drinks and all those things. So, but the point is, in the end, the muscle cell, basically the smooth muscle here, what it does is contract and relax and mixes. I'm going to show you a video of what churning looks like in the course of this series. All right. So, but the whole thing you need to remember here is the fact that the stomach has muscular tissue which helps it to churn, and churning means mixing of food with the gastric juice in it. Then the last one is the glandular tissue, which from the word glandular, it means glands, so it secretes different secretions or different what's it called, enzymes. In this instance, we have an enzyme that digests protein called pepsin. We also have the hydrochloric acid, which has two major functions. Number one, the hydrochloric acid, HCl for short, HCl, what it does is it creates the right pH for pepsin to work. Pepsin, amongst other enzymes, prefer to work in a very low pH. That's about pH of 2. That's quite acidic. So HCl create the right environment for pepsin to work. Then also it says it here that it also inhibits the growth or kills microorganisms. I mean, like bacteria that you might have eaten with the food, basically. So it means HCl has two functions. Function number one, to create the right environment for pepsin to work. Function number two, to inhibit, which means to stop the action of some microorganisms. Not microorganisms, please, because some bacteria have evolved in a way that they can actually coat themselves, and they will bypass the HCl in the stomach without getting digested, because you need to know that part, because the student once asked me and said, if HCl will help kill the microorganism, why then do we still fall sick? Yeah, we fall sick for two reasons. Number one, there's some microorganisms that came into our body not through what we ate, but rather through the noses, rather through cut, rather through other means, really. But even the ones that enter through the mouth, sometimes they have a way they protect themselves from being digested by HCl. So that's another thing. All right, you might want to pause the video at this instance to make sure you get things written down. All right. So you might also want to take a look at this again. All right, so that will be all for the moment. That's an introductory class into organization. I'm going to see you in the next. Bye-bye.